Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Business Banker Spotlight with your girl Lady J right here on JQLM Radio, a division of Ego Entertainment Network. And of course, before we bring out our guests, we must get those formalities out of the way. So if this is your first time tuning into the show or to JQLM Radio and you would like to share with your family, friends, and followers on all the different ways that they can tune in, this is what you would share. If this is your first time tuning into the show or to JQLM Radio and you would like to share with your family, friends, and followers on all the different ways that they can tune in, be sure to tell them to download the JQLM Radio app on their Apple or Android devices. You can also listen live to JQLM Radio 24/7, 365 via Amazon Alexa, TuneIn app, the Stream and Simple Radio app, and a host of other platforms of which you can find located on our website, where you can also listen live at egoentertainmentnet.com. Also, don't forget to follow, like, and share us. We do follow back. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at JQLM Radio. You can also connect with Ego Entertainment Network at EgoEntNet. That's EgoEntNet on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter also. Also, connect with us on LinkedIn at Ego Entertainment Network. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our YouTube channel, Ego TV Network, at youtube.com/Ego TV Network. All right, now that we have those formalities out of the way, let's bring on our guest. It's none other than author and podcast host, author Nikki Nicole. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Business Banker Spotlight. How are you?
I'm doing well. What about yourself?
Good. I can't complain. So before we dive into exactly what you do, tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, where you're from, and where you grew up, and what you were doing before you journeyed out on this venture of, having your own platform.
Okay, so I'm originally from South Carolina. I'm now residing in North Carolina. I was born and raised in a little small place called Mullins, South Carolina. It's about 45 minutes, maybe an hour from Myrtle Beach, if anybody's heard of that area. I've been there pretty much all my life. I came to North Carolina because I relocated for a job, actually, and been here ever since. Been here about 10 years. Kind of love it. It's bigger than the small place I'm used to. Before I became a podcaster and author, I was just a regular person working every day, 9 to 5. Sometimes multiple jobs, going to school, just doing my thing. And then after I wrote my first book, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to start a podcast. But it took me a year to plan. I planned it out very carefully. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do it this year. So I finally stepped out on faith and stopped letting fear hold me back from doing what I wanted to do. And here I am now, almost a year later, podcasting. So that's pretty much the story.
All right. So now that you are in the industry of podcasting, first let's back up and go into the book. So you wrote a book. Tell us a little bit about what made you want to write a book and what it's about.
All right. So I've been writing pretty much all my life. I started off writing like journaling, like most people, write down their feelings, whether it's good, bad, happy, sad times, and everything that was going on around me. So I wrote a couple of poems, matter of fact, in high school, and I actually published it. I published a couple of poems then, and I was like, I want to write a book. I want to publish a book one day. But at the time, I didn't really know how to do it. And I said, life went to life. So one day I said, I'm going to try it this time. I'm going to try it. I think I'm coming up on maybe 3-4 years now from writing my first book, Family Ties. Family Ties was a book I started off with that told a story through poetry about family, how I felt about family individually, my aunts, my uncles, my mother, a couple of cousins. So I just wrote poems about them and ventured on after that. And I said, you know what? I did it the first time, so I'm going to do it again. So I wrote another book, and that one was called Portrait of My Soul. That book was also a collection of poetry, but it was about like things that went on in my life, all the traumas that I went through in my life through a poetry form. So I said, all right, I done did 2 books. I'm gonna keep going. So I kept going, and I wrote a mixed short story collection. It was fiction though. It was nothing real about that. I was just miscellaneous stories about real life situations and how life can make these drastic turns. Just lessons for people to, learn from. So after that, I
Hmm.
said, all right, now I'm gonna write again. So I wrote another book. This was the first series of my life for my autobiography. It's called Camouflage. So I started giving people pieces of me. So I call that collection Pieces of Me. To give everybody
Okay.
a little bit about me and my life and things that I've went through. And just recently, last year, I said, you know what? I was supposed to publish 2 books early in the year, but I was a little delayed, got busy, real busy. So I was like, I'm still going to publish these books. So I released another book called Motherhood. And this is the journey about me as a single mother and hoping to encourage single mothers out there that regardless of what you're going through, you still can do it. You still can be the best version of yourself, even though you have kids. You're just delayed, not denied. So I wrote that book for them and I dedicated that to my daughter and my niece. And then I also published a motivational book as well and a journal. When I recently took over the life coach, I actually got certified and I was like, all right, it's time for me to motivate people, grind today, win tomorrow is the name of that book. And I was like, all right, so it's time for everybody to start using their 24 hours to make a difference. So that's what that book was about. So yeah, that's my journey as an author.
Okay, that's awesome. And some people they make a career out of writing. I have a friend who actually has become an authorpreneur, and she teaches other people how to become an authorpreneur. So that's
Mm.
that's awesome. So in writing all of this literature, what actually made you decide that hey, I want to start a podcast? So another thought had to come from something or somewhere. And how difficult did you think that it would be, or what challenges did you face?
Well, the thought of podcasting came everything starts with me from the beginning. So the thought of podcasting came from the fact that I was pretty much in my shell for most of my life. I wouldn't say how I felt. I was very quiet, very observed. So starting that podcast was kind of like what I said. My slogan is unleashing my own voice, my own inner voice, letting people know who I am inside out. So it started with me telling my story and getting behind the mic and being able to advertise me, my brand, my books, and everything. And then it just shifted. It shifted really fast to, you know what? I want to shine a light on people, everyday people doing great things because there's a lot of people out there that's doing great things that people don't even know about. So it shifted from me owning my voice to me spreading the light to other people and shining that light on others.
Okay, awesome. And so we know that the name of the podcast is Breaking the Silence. So tell us, what is, I'll say, the message, if there's a core message behind your podcast, and then what type of guests do you have on?
Well, the message behind Breaking the Silence is to allow people to have a platform to tell their stories, whether it's a success story, whether it's a trauma story, be able to share that story to help heal somebody else along the way. That's the reason why I called it Breaking the Silence. And at first I thought, I had to have specific guests. But then as time went by, I had one of my podcast friends tell me, you really can interview anybody. And I was like, what you mean? She was like, anybody can tell their story. Anybody can have a success. You can interview anybody. So I really don't have a particular guest that I would interview. If you have a story, if you have a success story, even a story about domestic violence, or maybe you've been through some trauma in your life, whatever story you have, this is the platform for it.
Okay, awesome. So tell us about some of your most favorite moments or accomplishments for Breaking the Silence.
Wow, this it's been a great year. I had the red carpet with you. I was so excited about that, being able to go to Atlanta and get on the red carpet, even though I was so nervous. So that was one
Yes.
one of my accomplishments. I've had a lot of celebrities to come across the platform as well. I've had Big V of Nappy Roots. I've had Miss Toy. I've had Tevin Studdard. And here in the next seasons to come, Adam Emil, he's one of the Color Me Bad members. So I'm steady getting some celebrity, attention. And then I've had just great people in general to tell their story that I didn't know about, that we're
Mhm.
still connected, even to this day. They think of me when it's something to come around. They think of me first. So it's just been a great run. It really has.
Awesome. So if you could, I'll say, give some advice to someone who is thinking about starting a podcast or shifting from one, passion to another, but maybe they have some reservations, what advice would you give?
Oh man, Lady J, that's a broad question. But it's a great question. Being a podcaster, you have to first have a passion for what you're doing. And you also have to know who you are so you can walk authentically, through your path, because it's gonna be some times where you feel like giving up. It's gonna be some hard times where you're trying to shift into this and you're like, oh, I need to change. I've changed so many things along this journey just through trial and error. Know that you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna meet some great people along the journey, and you just gotta be ready to deal with the good and the bad. But you just gotta keep moving no matter what.
Absolutely. So can you tell us, if any, what major challenge did you face when launching this podcast, and then how did you overcome it?
Honestly, I thought in the beginning that equipment was going to be my biggest challenge, but I actually was gifted in the beginning with my equipment. My daughter said, "You know what, Mom? It's time. It's time, and I'm going to buy you this equipment." And I'm gonna get you everything that you need along the way to keep you going on this journey. So my daughter actually bought the equipment and I started the journey. But I really thought in the beginning it was gonna be hard to, and it's still kind of hard to get the audience that I wanted, the audience that I needed, and people to actually tune in. It's still a kind of
Mm-hmm.
a struggle to a degree, especially when you're on platform. Now I'm only on YouTube streaming
Mm-hmm.
my episodes. So YouTube is kind of difficult to bring, the traffic there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gonna always be an ongoing thing. So you have to have patience of Job on the journey. And you gotta know that listen, it's gonna happen, but it might not happen today, but it's
Right.
gonna happen.
Right. So it is it is difficult, and I'm going to share a tidbit right here on this show real quick for those who don't know. For all of our listeners, they know that JQLM Radio is a division of Ego Entertainment Network, which is a huge platform. So syndication is always one of the best things that you can do. So you all, in if you want to grab an audience or a larger audience, and then you know develop a core audience that you can have and maintain consistently and continue to grow, syndication is going to be your best friend. So whether it's a radio show, whether it's a podcast, whether it's television, a film, or whatever, syndication, people, syndication. If you notice, a lot of the major podcasts, a lot of the major radio stations are syndicated on platforms like Ego Entertainment Network. So you have iHeart, you have, and things of that sort. And so, if you want to know more, we can chat a little bit after the show. So that's just a tidbit for all of you all out there, and Miss Nikki Nicole. So it is definitely going to be a benefit. So we have come down to the last minute of the show. Can you tell everybody how can they connect with you if they would like to be a part of your show, and how can they support?
Well, actually, at this time, Lady J, I'm so booked and busy. I think I'm booked for the whole year, actually. But if you would like to be a guest on Breaking the Silence for an exclusive interview that I do release every single week, to highlight someone, you can reach out to me via email, Breaking the Silence Podcast 2024 at gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on Facebook at Arthur Nikki Nicole, and let's connect. Let's win together.
All right, all right, all right. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today on Business Banger Spotlight. I really do appreciate you. And all of you who are tuned in, thank you so much for joining us here again for another episode of the Business Banker Spotlight with your girl, Lady J, right here on JQLM Radio. I hope that you all enjoy your day and remember to keep banging in business.